I'm Ryan O'Dowd, and you're listening to Ryan's Audiobooks on the Issues Magazine YouTube channel. Today, we will finish Prometheus Rising by Robert Anton Wilson with Section 6, 30, picking up in the middle of the afterword, apprehending Bob non-simultaneously. At this point, the discussion itself shifted in two directions away from the original question. That was partially my fault. I decided to look at the question from another angle. Both Tim and Bob alluded to a correlation between lower and upper circuits. Circuit 1 connects to Circuit 5, Circuit 2 to Circuit 6, Circuit 3 to Circuit 7, and Circuit 4 to Circuit 8. In Prometheus Rising, Bob describes Circuit 3, Circuit 7 correlation. Thus, a genius is one who, by some internal process, breaks through to Circuit 7, a minor neurological miracle loosely called intuition, and comes back down to the third circuit with the capacity to paint a new semantic map, build a new model of experience. Okay, bear with me here. If we say C7 metaprogramming allows for reprogramming C3 semantics, then the neurogenetic circuit, now C6, with access to information encoded in the blueprint of our DNA, somehow has to correlate to C2 anal emotional territorial issues. In Prometheus Rising, Bob writes about neurogenetic intelligence. Experience of this circuit is numinous, mystical, mind-shattering. Here dwell the archetypes of Jung's collective unconscious, gods, goddesses, demons, hairy dwarfs, and other personifications of the DNA programs, instincts that govern us. Perhaps these personifications of our instincts as archetypes in the collective unconscious serve as models for examining the emotions of Circuit 2. That seemed plausible to me, but I felt like I was reaching to connect C6 to C2. So I asked the advisors, does the neuroelectric circuit, Bob's metaprogramming circuit, more readily correlate to the second emotional territorial circuit or the third time-bending semantic circuit? And what about the neurogenetic circuit? Mike Gathers wrote, emphasizing the upper-lower relationship of the circuits has led Antero, Ali, to assigning C6 to neuroelectric, psychic intelligence in the shock of uncertainty, and C7 to neurogenetic, mythogenetic intelligence in the shock of indivisibility. He feels pretty strongly about those definitions. I've challenged him on it. I read again Antero Ali's descriptions of the circuits, and when considering the lower-upper relationships, I still could see circuits 6 and 7 in either position. So I invited Antero into the discussion, forwarding him the previous emails. He wrote, great discussion here. I've given the topic much thought and application and have come to my own assessments which can be looked into with some depth by following the podcast link below. Antero has certainly given a lot of thought to the lower-upper correlations in the 8 circuits model. And the podcast interview was interesting, but alas, there was nothing I found that helped me understand Bob's switching of circuits 6 and 7. A thought-provoking digression, but still without an answer. The second shift in the discussion started when Mike Gathers added an aside. When I read Leary and Wilson, I walk away with the notion that lower circuits are to be transcended as we evolve into the higher circuits. I got the impression that C2 territorial grunting was primitive and undesirable. That does not resonate fully with me. And with Antero, I found a different perspective where all 8 circuits are to be integrated and each honored for its own brand of intelligence. Michael Johnson added, Antero wanted to unite Leary's relatively hard scientific take with Raw's more expansive and erudite versions. But his main criticism, as I see it, in taking the 8CB model in new directions, had to do with Antero's perception of Tim's and Bob's denigration of emotions and to some extent the body. There seems something to have fun arguing about here. Bob and Tim, for all their Korzybskian awareness, seem to use emotion in a special and relatively careless way. I think it's this Antero objects to. Both Tim and Bob were harsh in their analyses of human primates, but when you look at the behavior of human primates, pointing out poor use of the first 4 circuits seems like a logical first step in introducing a new model of the evolution of intelligence. I had the understanding that Bob presented the extremes of behavior in each of the lower circuits so that we could learn to balance each circuit. In Circuit 1, we learn the value of trust, the I'm okay of transactional analysis. Add trust to Circuit 2 dominance, and we have what Tim described as friendly strength. See the Leary interpersonal circumplex. Bob emphasized Korzybski's general semantics and other tools as a way of making sense of our maze of Circuit 3 artifacts and symbolic systems, most especially language itself. As for a response to the current state of our Circuit 4 moral socio-sexual behavior, Tim as High Priest of a psychedelic revolution and Bob as Discordian Pope and guerrilla ontologist both offered a wealth of examples of creative use of the Fourth Circuit. I was about to send this rant off to the advisors when advisor Valerie Corral responded with pretty much the same idea. This is a lovely and provoking conversation. I'm not certain that I would agree that Bob, at least, looked at the circuits to be transcended as much as to be integrated and built upon. Rather more like the ingredients in making lasagna, where the flying may be the result of the perfect synthesis of those circuits. Brady Wedman added, "Perhaps the tastiest lasagna is that we imagine circuits in order. If you are unfamiliar with the lasagna metaphor, you can read about it in Bob's screenplay Reality is What You Can Get Away With. An alien voice implores keep the lasagna flying, meaning we should let our brains be free." Brady's comment pulled my brain in several directions at once and led me to recall an earlier comment from Michael Johnson. Let's not lose sight that the entire ACB model is metaphoric, but that Raw, like to quote Norman Brown, all that is metaphor. Metaphors, maps, reality tunnels. The more information we receive, the more we have to revise our models. John Higgs offered this observation. It's worth noting that Tim's system wasn't fixed or final during the time Bob knew him. Tim was working on it and tinkering with it for pretty much all the second half of his life, especially during the 70s. Changes would be made or be rolled back based on new experiences, insights, whether Tim wanted to be seen as a mystic or a scientist, and how important a pleasing symmetry was to Tim at the time. Which version is the definitive version is pretty much a matter of personal choice, which is entirely fitting for those two. Somehow, without getting an answer, I felt like I was getting an answer. Then Toby Philpott became a Raw Trust advisor, read through the discussion, and sent this report. The Maybe Logic Academy offered the first 15 people to join direct access to Raw, as well as the courses, in the form of the right to email him personally for 12 weeks. This issue had bothered me for a while, so I asked Bob. Sombunal text labeled the 6th circuit as the metaprogramming level, and the 7th as the neurogenetic. Others labeled the 6th circuit as the neurogenetic, and the 7th as the neuroelectric or metaprogramming circuit. I haven't gone back to compare dates or the reference text to see whether it marked a difference of opinion or merely a one-off revision made at a specific point in time. It certainly made me try to decide which I thought or felt fitted best. Do you find these two versions still toggle for you, or do you now have a preferred model? This is what he replied to my query. Leary revised this model several times. The version in PR contains a few revisions of my own. Scientific models often need revision. The model in this course is the latest, not the last. Warmly, Bob. Toby added, he didn't resolve it for me. Well, he didn't say why he changed the model, which is what we both wanted to know, but he did answer the toggle part of the question, maybe. His last comment certainly intrigued me. The model in this course is the latest, not the last. Near the end of our discussion, I wrote the Raw Trust advisors. Even though I find all this fascinating, it hasn't convinced me that Bob's Prometheus Rising order has more merit. I think these are thought-provoking models, no matter which one I may prefer. The 8th Circuit's model appears in more than 3 of Bob's books, but when I looked closely at the 3 books that offer the most description, I started to see John Higgs' comment in a new light. It's clearly Cosmic Trigger, but occasionally Prometheus Rising, when it's not being Cosmic Trigger, which always is, unless it's quantum psychology. I read through the descriptions of the neuroelectric or metaprogramming circuit in Cosmic Trigger, Prometheus Rising, and quantum psychology, and pulled out a phrase or two that seemed to me to characterize the essence of the circuit, but also the tone and style of each book's description. In the autobiographical Cosmic Trigger 1, where Timothy Leary is a central character in the story's adventure, the 8th Circuit's model sounds a lot like Tim's descriptions of the model in exopsychology. You can hear Bob's words infused with Tim's energetic presence. The characteristics of the neuroelectric circuit are high velocity, multiple choice, relativity, and the fusion, fission of all perceptions into parallel science fiction universes of alternate possibilities. Cosmic Trigger 1, C6, the neuroelectric circuit. Prometheus Rising was Bob's PhD dissertation modified, adding much to the humor and nothing to the good taste, Bob says. into an owner's manual for the human brain. But rather than a dry step-by-step manual, the narrative sounds as if it could be the words of an experienced elder educating younger members of the tribe. The metaprogrammer awakes, and you begin to create infinite realities, where before there was really one static jail cell reality in which you were trapped. The soul, or Circuit 7, is constant, because it is, as the Chinese say, void or no form. It is the creative void of the Taoists. Prometheus Rising, C7 Metaprogramming Circuit. Quantum Psychology, subtitled How Brain Software Programs You in Your World, has a section on the 8 circuits as part of the book's broad and scholarly look at the intersection of the two fields of science. Bob's voice sounds less like an elder before a tribe and more like an extremely hip professor in a classroom. LSD showed the majority of psychologists and neuroscientists that rapid changes in human brain functioning could occur easily given the right techniques. Dr. Timothy Leary sounded like a nut to most people when he said nearly 30 years ago, you can change yourself as easily as you change the channel on a TV. Now, even though Dr. Leary still suffers from media slander and misrepresentation, the avant one-third of the population understands very well what Leary meant vis-a-vis A, no essential self or static ego exists, B, we can metaprogram our nervous systems for a variety of selves, many of them evolutionarily far in advance of the present Terran average. Quantum Psychology, C6, the metaprogramming system. I like all three Bobs, the storyteller, the elder, and the professor. I get the same interesting optimism and mind-bending speculations from all three. I admit I like the elder renaming the neuroelectric circuit the metaprogramming circuit and elevating the metaprogrammer to Circuit 7. That puts the metaprogrammer just next to Circuit 8's non-local cosmic awareness, which comfortably reminds me of Buddhist teachings about the nature of mind, but that's just my thing. I may never know why the elder Bob switched Circuits 6 and 7 in Prometheus Rising. I could speculate, but I can't approach any certainty with any available evidence. Bob loved to quote Bucky Fuller, who said, universe is non-simultaneously apprehended. Meaning that, in my case, the part of the universe I've apprehended doesn't have Bob telling me why he switched the circuits. Alas, I'm not adept enough in neurogenetic or non-local quantum intelligence to instantly know the answer. Maybe if I could figure out a way to manipulate space-time and establish a stable wormhole to another dimension where I could get a line through to Bob, assuming he's there, I could ask him for some clarification, but he left clear instructions in that respect. Don't channel me. Robert Raza, Weed, California, 2015. Let's conclude section 630, the afterword of Prometheus Rising by Robert Anton Wilson. And in fact, that completes the book, Prometheus Rising by Robert Anton Wilson. Tomorrow we will begin a new book, The Chaldean Oracles of Zoroaster. It's an important book, and we're going to move through it slowly. I will see you then. Olam.